I think people always think of them as Easter eggs, but a lot of them are more kind of just foreshadowing to like what's to come. I really admire the way writers laid down pipe for the story, literally season 1 or season 2, that didn't get paid off until like the final season. It's very confident to me, and it's also what could feel like a throwaway line feels like such a treat as an audience to be like, oh my gosh, like that really like paid off. So that's what I hope to create for the people who read my books or, watch my shows. Hi, I'm Jenny Han, and welcome to the Screenplayed Breakdown.
Hello, and welcome to the Screenplayed Breakdown. Today I'm here with Jenny Han, author of the Summer I Turned Pretty book series, as well as To All the Boys I Loved Before, and one of the few writers to transition into the role of showrunner for shows of her own books, such as The Summer I Turned Pretty and XO Kitty. Thanks for joining us, Jenny.
My pleasure.
Could you give us a brief introduction to who you are?
Okay, I'm Jenny. I live in New York. I'm a writer. I started out writing books, and now I write screenplays, and I also produce, and I now direct.
Fantastic. No, that's great. I mean, you do it all, so we'll have a lot to talk about today. So first off, with the multiple roles that you're juggling with writing, producing, and directing,
Mhm.
to tell all these stories, what gets you up in the morning to actually do all this work?
Mm. Well, I just like it. It's fun. I like being on set. I like being busy. I like being around people and collaborating on projects. So for me, I think that's what gets me excited is working with people and telling stories.
No, of course. And I mean, clearly no shortage of stories there. But bringing up those stories, The Summer I Turned Pretty, I think you wrote the book starting in the 2000s and then with the show starting in the 2020s. There are obvious changes from the books to the actual show. Are those changes a necessity of adaptation, or would they be changes that you would make to the books if you had to go back and rewrite them?
Well, I approached the project as if I was writing the story for the first time in, I guess it was 2020 when I wrote the pilot. So that was kind of, for me, what made it feel fun and exciting and new. I think I'm always looking for ways to feel creatively engaged and trying to find my way into what makes it feel like a new experience.
And then going back to your kind of education and your start of your writing career, um, was there one person or teacher, colleague, co-writer that taught you the most about writing?
Mm. Wow. That taught me the most about writing? Well, you know what? One thing I remember from, doing my MFA at New School, um, I think I handed in a like, a essay or something, and he was like, "Stay lean,
Hmm.
keep it lean," like, keep the writing really, tight and, um, kind of to the bone, and I think that resonated with me because, I do like to be really concise, with my writing, and it's pretty spare.
And is that just with the words on the page or with dialogue, kind of keeping that as small as possible? Or is that
Mm,
just keeping it lean in terms of the story beats, not having anything, over the top?
I think he meant it, in terms of the writing, of the prose. Yeah.
Mhm. And speaking of writing that you like, are there certain writers that you admire the most that make you want to emulate them or achieve that kind of emotional impact that they might have had on you?
Well, I love, Never Let Me Go. Have you read that book?
Yes, I actually had to read that in high school. It was
Oh, you did?
extremely impactful. Yeah.
Yeah, because, what I think is so special about that book is the experience of it feels really like you're transported somewhere else, and then it feels familiar, but then it's a bit of a kind of fog,
Yes.
and you're kinda like, "Something doesn't feel right, I'm, like,
Yes.
confused," and you're just thinking, "I'm just confused," and then suddenly the fog lifts and everything becomes very clear, and I love reading a book and then having that experience of something, where
Mhm.
they take you someplace and then suddenly you are having this crazy experience that the storyteller has crafted for you, and, I really admire that. I remember having a similar but different, feeling with Gone Girl. Have you read
Hmm.
Gone Girl?
No, just the movie.
Okay, well, I haven't seen the movie, but I loved the book and I read it all in one night. It's pretty
Oh,
long
wow.
too. And I was doing it on my iPad, so my eyes were just like I was like literally like trying to open them so I could keep going. And then the moment where everything flips was like very shocking.
Hmm. No, I completely agree. Both for the film and I think it was the Ishiguro book. That's the writer of Neverland.
Yes.
In high school, being immensely confused.
Yeah, it's confusing, but then you're like, "Oh, I was supposed to be, confused,"
I
and then it
just
was like being on a train and everything's kinda foggy, and then suddenly, like, the fog is, like, breaking, and you're like, "Whoa."
and with that impact on you, do you think that's something that you think about when you're writing how to create that kind of moment where, or I'm thinking about in season one, the mother, you don't know what's happening, and at the end of the show, I mean, or not the show, sorry, the season, she passes away. Is that something you try to build in moments of confusion to then that kind of
No,
reveal?
no. I think I'm thinking just more of an experience,
Mm,
as an audience member, or a reader that you get to have, and I guess where I would say I most explore that is it just trying to create worlds for the audience to be in that you kind of sink into the story and um, it feels very real. And even even I think when I'm doing like a TikTok or something, I think I'm just extending the the world in a way, where you're presenting something to your audience that hopefully they enjoy or get something out of. Yeah, I guess to me, it's really about making that connection with the audience.
right. And for example, the summer I turned pretty, what was that emotional world you wanted to create? Just summer, childhood memory, even for older readers?
Memory is exactly it. When I was pitching the show, I said, I want the show to feel like a memory. Like you're kind of reaching back to some place from your childhood or teenagehood and kind of pressing on that memory. And it feels really familiar, nostalgic, um, kind of warm and cozy, but also just really real. I think that's what I look for is authenticity and um, I wanna when I'm in a story, I really wanna be in it and all the characters feel real to me as an audience member, and the world feels very real to me. So that's what I hope to create for the people who read my books or, watch my shows.
Absolutely no. And given the extraordinarily positive response, I think you've done that well.
Thank you.
And just moving through the show, transitioning from writer to showrunner, and then eventually to director, that being a new experience for you. That kind of first day, that actual first experience, was there something in that day or those days when you were shooting that went wrong? That maybe a scene wasn't working or a
Mhm,
location
mhm.
just isn't available.
All
If
the
you can
time.
remember, what happened and what did you do?
Okay, so one thing that happened was, the location for a really pivotal moment in the episode, which is a scene, where they're at, like, a farm stand. We were waiting for flowers to grow, and the people who owned the farm were like, "Oh, yeah, they'll be ready by a certain date," and then we were sort of checking in on it, and it was just looking like a dirt patch, and you can't really predict when that's gonna happen, so we had to keep moving the date and going deeper and deeper into the season, but luckily, I'm there every day 'cause, I'm the also, um, one of the showrunners, and so it was okay for me. I'm like, "I don't want a dirt patch. I want, like, beautiful flowers in the background of the scene," so I'm happy to wait, and luckily, we did get that. Um so that was just like a logistical thing that happens all the time with TV where you have to be really nimble, and usually you don't have the luxury of pushing back 3 times the way that
Right.
we did, but, in this case, everyone knew this was my, like, directorial debut, and it was very important to me, and the scene was very important to me, and, um, a very supportive crew and, group of people around me, so I felt, like everyone was pushing towards the same goal, which was to make the episode just the way I pictured it, and, luckily, like, it did turn out that way. I would say one other example I would name is there's a scene in my episode where Belly and Conrad are sitting at the dinner table at the end of this sort of journey they've been on together of, I think, kind of getting to know each other again. And I think Belly has walls up, Conrad has walls up, and it's sort of all faded away a bit. And they've been like sharing a bottle of wine, um, and Conrad's getting kind of lost in the sauce, thinking back to memories,
Hmm.
and she's really relaxed too. And then Jeremiah comes home in the middle of that,
Hmm.
and originally the way I imagined the scene was a bit more that Jeremiah comes in and he's peacocking a bit more.
Right.
But then as I was watching it play out, in the moment, it was giving me like such a bad feeling that it felt like really hurtful, to um, Conrad in a way that it makes you, I think, really not um, sympathize with Belly or Jeremiah, and it felt off to me. And
Mm.
so that was a moment where I felt really glad to be also the person who wrote the episode to run in and then, guys, like, we have to sort of reimagine this scene completely different than the way that we like planned for it, because I just think it's not quite landing the way that we initially imagined it to. Um and Gavin was disappointed. I know. I was, because he was like looking forward to doing, because he had to suffer when Chris was in the scene in season 2 and he's in the back of the car and he's like such a little like punk the whole trip.
Hmm.
And but everybody really like quickly locked in, and um even though the words are pretty much the same, it was just the feeling was different. So I said to Lola, who plays Billy, I was like, can you just like really include Conrad in the scene? So
Right.
don't box him out of it, even though you're speaking to Jeremiah, be looking at him and keeping him a part of it. So it feels like you're sensitive to how he's feeling as well, and just understanding that a bit. And so she did, and then I think I was really happy with the way that the scene turned out, and glad that they were able to, stay with me and be really nimble and um, kind of like flip it really quickly.
Got it. And then, I mean, that I think that's to me really interesting. Do you find in the writing and show running half of it that the show ends up being very closely to what you imagined and have planned
Mm.
intricately, or there's a lot of these on the day gut changes?
Sometimes there are changes, and sometimes it's which is actually my favorite thing,
Really?
is when the actors will do something that surprises me and I didn't imagine it that way, and then they do something and I'm like, "Oh, I really like their take on it,"
Hmm.
and the way that they interpreted it. But, also there are scenes where it's exactly how I pictured it, and that's really wonderful for me, who I've, lived with the story and with these characters for so many years, and honestly, so have my original readers
Hmm.
too. So I think of them often in terms of wanting to make sure that, I try to honor that.
Right. No, I mean, I think it's a wonderful balance to strike. And speaking of the kind of surprises and those unexpected moments, in reading other books or watching films or shows, was there one of those pieces of media that challenged you to think about writing or stories or directing in a way that you hadn't before, even when you were maybe younger, something that
Hmm.
opened your mind to new possibilities?
You mean, what's a story that I, like, read or saw that made my world, like, expand? Is that what you
Yeah,
mean? Like
I think so. I mean, for me personally, just to give an example, it was a bit more R-rated, but No Country for Old Men.
mm,
Spoilers: Llewellyn dies midway through, and when I was younger, I was shocked. I thought, you can't kill the main character. This is clearly a very poorly written book. Years later, I realized, of course, that's the point. There's so much more that you can do than follow a character all the way through, and there's bigger things at work.
mm.
And that challenged me to just think about movies and stories in a way I'd never thought before.
I guess one thing that's stuck with me is I was a big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Mm,
the show, and um, I really admire the way um, the writers like laid down pipe for the story. Um, in like literally season one or season two, that didn't get paid off until like the final season, and
right.
I think that's really cool to see somebody build story in that way that it's very confident to me, and it's also feels like such a treat as an audience to be like, oh my gosh, like that really like paid off. Like there's like it
Hmm.
was what could feel like a throwaway line. um I think, okay, for instance, I think in season two, did you watch Buffy or do you not know it?
I know of it. I apologize. I have not seen it.
No, well, you should watch it because it's a really good show, really
Hmm.
tight. But in season two, there's this element. There's one of the characters, a very beloved character, Willow. She kind of has to do this spell suddenly to help out the main character, and then one of the other characters, Giles, says, "When some doors when they're opened are really hard to close," and it's a little feels like a throwaway thing,
Hmm.
but then much later. Uh, that same character who's very beloved, struggles with, like, dark magic and stuff. That's, like, seasons down the road,
Right.
and, like, just little things like that, that, again, if you're not really, like you're just watching and appreciating the scene for what it is, um, I just admire that, and, I think that to me is, like, a very, like, nice, like, craft when it comes to storytelling, is that you, have that confidence in your audience member too, that it's something that they can remember and something that will kind of pierce into them,
Hmm.
and that you also it's also the confidence to take your time with it and like let it unfold when it needs to unfold.
Right. No, I think that's great. And were there any of those moments that you tried to, now that you had the books completed, weave into the version of the story earlier on that might not have been in the books earlier?
mm, I don't know about that, but certainly, like, there's conversations that the characters had in season one that I think kind of pay off in season three, and just little I think people always think of them as Easter eggs, but a lot of them are more kind of just foreshadowing to like what's to come.
Right. Okay. No, thank you. And then while we still have a few minutes left, I know our fans had a lot of questions that they wanted to
Ooh,
get through, and we won't be able to get to all of them, but hopefully just a couple.
okay, I'll try to
Um, so,
run through.
for one, what has it meant to you to be able to tell a young woman's coming of age story that has resonated with so many people around the world?
To me, I mean, it's like sort of the best part of it. Honestly, I think
Mhm.
a lot of times stories about young women are maybe not regarded in the same way or the same level of attention or seriousness, and I think we often think of boys stories as universal,
Mhm.
and girls stories are more niche and for girls, but yet girls are expected to empathize with male main characters all the time, right? Like, you know but yet I think it's kind of one of the reasons why there's this like abundance of superhero movies, because they know that women will go to watch those too, but then um male audiences don't as often watch quote unquote female driven stories.
Right.
So it definitely pleased me how expansive this audience was, because I would see a lot of guys were also watching the show,
Mhm.
and I think you can relate to any character really. It's like just we're all like humans. And so I don't
Mhm.
think it should be limited by if, you know, you're a guy or girl or old or young or your race. Like there's something I think that you can connect to with really any character if it feels real and full and like rounded.
Mhm. No, absolutely. And I've seen many TikToks of people being brought in, and it's the whole family, it's a whole group of people. And in New York, I saw an entire bar block
I
party spilling out
know.
onto the street.
And, like, that's the biggest compliment, I think, because, yeah, I think bringing people together to experience the show as a group and then seeing them get so hype and people are, like, crying and, like, screaming and laughing, and I think more and more, like, everything was so insular and people you listen to music with your headphones on, you're watching shows on your little phone, and it's less of a communal experience. So the fact that this show that's like on a streamer could bring people together in real life and seeing like, freshmen in their dorms and they were making new friends or like sports teams, people at work getting to work early to watch the episode. Like
Mhm.
how cool is that? It's like it's amazing to think that this show could bring people together in that way.
Absolutely, no, and with the people talk about the theater experience changing, but there clearly is a large amount of people being brought together by this, and I think that's great. And well, we have, I think, time for one more question from the audience. When adapting your own writing, how do you decide what stays on the page and what should become visual or unspoken on screen?
I think about what are the really resonant moments that, I think people will be really hoping to see. And so I try to always incorporate those. And then I think, you know, now that I've been working with this cast for several years now too, I know what they're capable of and how truly amazing they are. They're very gifted. And so certain things I think they can really communicate um, with their eyes or a look that doesn't need to be spelled out.